2025 was supposed to be another victory lap for Harley-Davidson, but instead, it turned into a wake-up call no one saw coming. Dealers were drowning in chrome they couldn't sell, prices climbed, and riders who'd been loyal for decades finally said, enough. Out on the road, riders called it betrayal. Because somewhere along the line, Harley stopped building for the people who built Harley. In this video, we're cutting through the marketing smoke and showing what really went wrong and why it matters to every rider who still believes the open road should mean freedom. Stick around till the end, you'll see why this story hits home for all of us. The year the chrome dulled. The year began with optimism new models. New marketing, but behind the polished launch videos. Dealers were whispering the same word, slow down. Sales that were supposed to surge, flatlined. Factory output stumbled. And by March, insiders admitted what riders already felt in their gut. Harley had overbuilt, overcharged, and underestimated its own loyal base. The real problem wasn't demand, it was direction. Harley bet big on exclusivity, while its core customers were tightening their belts. Riders walked into showrooms expecting evolution and found repetition. The 2025 models looked and felt nearly identical to the previous year's bikes, except for the price tag, which climbed by thousands. That mismatch between promise and payoff shattered trust faster than any recall could. Dealers sat on unsold inventory, while buyers realized patience might finally pay. A 2024 looked smarter, cheaper, and just as capable. And for a brand built on pride, that hurt more than any financial loss. It was a cultural crack. Inside Milwaukee, executives called it a market correction. Out on the road, riders called it what it was, a wake-up call. The company that once sold rebellion was now learning what happens when the crowd stops believing in the legend. But while riders lost faith on the streets, something even bigger was unraveling inside Harley's headquarters. The boardroom revolt. Behind closed doors in Milwaukee, the year 2025 turned into open rebellion. The numbers were undeniable, shipments down, profit margins shrinking, and dealers furious over unsold stock. When the quarterly call hit, investors didn't ask questions, they demanded answers. The CEO's strategy of premium consolidation suddenly looked like corporate denial dressed as leadership. Executives clashed in meetings that insiders described as combustible. The old-school loyalists, those who believed Harley's heritage could still carry the brand, found themselves outnumbered by profit-driven voices demanding faster results. Every decision became a battle. Keep the faith with longtime riders or chase short-term investor relief. Then came the leak. Meeting notes circulated, showing Harley had intentionally raised the 2025 prices to slow down to 1,023 and 24 inventory turnover. In plain terms, they inflated one model year to make the old ones look like bargains. That trick might have worked on paper, but riders saw through it. Morale plummeted. Dealers felt played. And the people who built the bikes, they watched the company trade trust for quarterly stability. Inside the boardroom, one executive was overheard muttering, "We've forgotten who we build for." That line spread through the ranks like wildfire. By summer, Harley wasn't just fighting a financial problem, it was fighting for its identity. And the silence that followed those meetings echoed louder than any engine ever built. If you're into real stories the media won't touch, and breakdowns that actually matter to riders, hit the like button and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What's the biggest story the mainstream's ignoring right now? Costs climb, margins shrink. By mid-year 2025, the financial strain became undeniable. Every part of the business that once fed profit was now bleeding it. Steel prices rose, shipping fees doubled, tariffs made imported components costlier than ever. And even the smallest parts, sensors, harnesses, bolts, became a daily battle to source. What used to be a tidy profit margin had turned into a desperate exercise in survival math. Dealers felt it first. The bikes arriving on their lots cost more to buy from the factory, leaving them less room to negotiate. Meanwhile, corporate pushed for higher retail prices to protect its own margins, putting dealers squarely between angry buyers and frustrated executives. A base touring bike that sold for $26,000 just a year before now hovered around $28,000, and that was before fees. At the same time, Harley's financing arm tightened its credit standards, cutting off many of the very riders who had built its legacy. The working-class base that once stretched budgets to buy into the dream suddenly couldn't qualify for it. What had been a lifestyle was now a luxury. The cruelest part? These rising costs didn't make the bikes better. Harley was paying more to deliver the same machines, and riders noticed. Each dealership invoice carried the same silent message. The price of loyalty had never been higher. And as the pressure mounted, those on the front lines, the dealers themselves, were left holding the weight of a company that couldn't decide which way to turn. If you live this life on two wheels, not just watch it, check the description for the gear and accessories that keep me rolling. Dealers left holding chrome. By late 2025, frustration spilled from Milwaukee's spreadsheets onto showroom floors nationwide. Dealers were drowning in unsold bikes. Rows of road glides, street glides, and Softails sat untouched under fluorescent lights, their polished tanks reflecting empty lobbies. For many dealers, the math was brutal months of inventory on hand, rising floor plan interest, and almost no foot traffic. The loyal customers were still around, but they weren't buying. Some came in to look, others just to talk, but very few signed papers. When they did, it was usually for a used 2023 or 2024 model that dealers discounted heavily just to keep the lights on. The brand that once symbolized American strength now looked fragile, propped up by nostalgia and hope. One dealer from Ohio put it bluntly, "We're selling history, not motorcycles." He wasn't wrong. The chrome still gleamed, but the confidence had rusted. Longtime Harley owners saw the cracks, limited parts, inconsistent build quality, and a corporate attitude that felt more Wall Street than Main Street. The smaller dealerships suffered the worst. Without corporate relief or sales momentum, many trimmed staff or closed service bays to stay afloat. Mechanics who had turned wrenches for 30 years were suddenly out of work. The human cost of Harley's miscalculation rippled far beyond the balance sheet. It hit local economies and communities that had carried the brand for generations. The silence inside those showrooms became symbolic. A hollow echo of loyalty tested too many times. But the silence in the showrooms was nothing compared to what was happening inside Milwaukee's boardroom. The boardroom revolt. Inside the glass towers of Milwaukee, the year 2025 didn't begin with the roar of engines. It began with whispers. Earnings calls turned into interrogations. For the first time in years, Harley's leadership faced direct challenge from its own investors. Activist shareholders, tired of polite promises and vague turnarounds, demanded results after yet another weak quarter. What was once confidence had turned into quiet suspicion. Reports from inside the company described tension thick enough to cut with a wrench. The CEO defended his strategy: fewer models, tighter margins, and a focus on premium builds, but his words landed flat. Around the long oak table, men and women who had spent decades betting on Harley's myth now stared at spreadsheets showing reality. Sales were down, production delays were stacking up, and the so-called return to core values plan wasn't returning anything. Insiders called it a heritage split. The old guard wanted patience to rebuild trust. Profit hawks wanted quick returns. The clash wasn't about chrome, it was about time. Veterans left, younger execs pushed harder, and unity cracked. "We're riding blind now," one insider admitted. Beneath the fluorescent hum of Milwaukee's boardroom, Harley's rebellion wasn't out on the streets anymore. It was happening inside its own walls. The revolt inside those walls was only the beginning. Soon the road ahead disappeared altogether. The vanishing map. When a company stops giving guidance, it's like a rider taking his hands off the bars. In early 2025, Harley-Davidson quietly withdrew its financial roadmap, a move that stunned both analysts and dealers. For decades, even during the rough twin-cam recalls and the 2009 downturn, Harley always gave direction sales projections, market targets, production goals, but not this time. Dealers waiting for clarity on shipment schedules received silence. Some reported hearing rumors before receiving official communication. Conference calls, once filled with buzzwords like revitalization, now sounded like static. A veteran dealer from Ohio described it best. "We were used to bad news, but we were never used to no news." That void was louder than any recall. Wall Street called it strategy. Dealers called it chaos. With no clear plan, rumors replaced answers. Unsold 2023s filled warehouses while pricier 25s crowded showrooms. Sell at a loss or choke on inventory. Either way, confidence died. Even loyal reps went silent. "We didn't need motivation, we needed a plan," one manager said. For a brand built on direction, losing the map was the hardest blow yet. As clarity vanished from the headquarters, another problem surfaced. The price of loyalty had never been higher. Paying more, getting less. For decades, riders believed that paying a premium for a Harley meant getting something special. But in 2025, that belief started to crack. Prices climbed, sometimes by $2,000, sometimes more, while the bikes themselves barely changed. The same 117 cubic centimeter engine, the same electronics, the same saddlebags. The upgrades were skin deep, yet the bills weren't. Dealers whispered what riders already suspected. The company had raised prices partly to slow sales of older stock. It was a classic marketing trick. Make the new models costlier, so last year's inventory suddenly looks like a deal. But this time, it backfired. Buyers walked into showrooms expecting improvement and left, realizing they were paying more for the same ride. For loyal riders, the betrayal ran deep. Paying more was fine, being played wasn't. Hidden fees piled up, dealers refused to bend. And the buying process felt more corporate than free. Even insiders admitted Harley had priced itself into a corner. "We built for pride, not price tags," one engineer said. Sales slipped, profits shrank, and the louder Harley bragged about exclusivity, the smaller its crowd became. But higher prices weren't the only issue. The cracks went deeper, into the parts bins and service bays, where the real loyalty was tested. Service strain and parts pain. When the front line breaks, you don't need a spreadsheet to tell you. Across the country, service departments were stretched thin in 2025. Mechanics spoke of long waits, missing parts, and growing frustration. Some bikes sat for weeks waiting for back-ordered components that used to arrive in days. The problem wasn't just inconvenience, it was identity. Harley's reputation was built on the promise that help was always close, that a dealership could get you rolling again. That promise started slipping. Dealers blamed logistics. The company blamed suppliers. Riders blamed both. Simple maintenance jobs turned into month-long ordeals. Stories spread online of brand new models waiting for minor fixes, while their owners paid storage fees. The loyalty that once came automatically now had to fight through every delay. In the service bays, loyalty turned to fatigue. Veteran mechanics, gray-haired and grease-stained, said the system was broken. Parts delayed, support fading. Some used aftermarket pieces just to keep riders rolling, risking reprimand for integrity's sake. Harley's real strength was always its people, but in 2025, they felt forgotten. Each delay, each overpriced part, each unanswered call pulled another thread from the brand's once unbreakable bond. While executives argued over numbers, riders out on the highway felt the real cost: empty roads, older faces. By the summer of 2025, the roads told the truth that corporate reports tried to hide. On highways that once thundered with chrome and exhaust, the silence was impossible to ignore. Gas stations that used to fill with bikes on weekends now saw mostly pickup trucks. The core riding crowd was aging, and few new faces were showing up to replace them. Across the country, state data confirmed it. New motorcycle licenses were down again, continuing a decline that had started years before. In small towns, the scene looked familiar but thinner. The same riders gathered at the same cafes, but the conversations had changed. Instead of talking about new models or road trips, the talk turned to back pain, retirement checks, and how expensive a full tank had become. The open road culture that once defined freedom was turning into nostalgia. Younger generations weren't joining the club, they were watching from the sidelines, glued to screens instead of handlebars. Older riders finally admitted, it takes more than passion to keep riding. Costs rose, bikes grew heavier, and comfort replaced rebellion. Many turned to trikes, or memories instead of miles. They just come in to reminisce, one dealer said. Harley's biggest rival wasn't another brand, it was time. The lifestyle that built an empire began to fade, leaving empty roads and a generation wondering what comes next. And in that quiet, another shift began, not in the engine or the frame, but in what the badge itself meant. Losing the badge, not the soul. For riders who grew up idolizing the Harley Shield, 2025 felt like a betrayal wrapped in nostalgia. The badge that once symbolized defiance and craftsmanship now looked like corporate packaging. Longtime owners didn't lose their love for the machines, they lost faith in the people selling them. Every slick campaign and overproduced reveal video felt out of touch with the world inside the garage. The disconnect wasn't new, but it had never felt this wide. Harley's soul was forged in sweat, distance, and steel, not in marketing meetings or investor calls. Riders started saying it out loud. The company was talking about heritage, while forgetting how to honor it. What used to be pride now carried a trace of disappointment. In diners and garages, old riders defended what Harley once stood for, machines that crossed 1,000 miles without complaint and outlived their owners. Even those done buying still polished their old bikes with pride. They can change slogans, not meaning, one said. The brand's true soul never sat in offices. It rumbled in garages, preserved by riders who kept the legend alive when the company forgot how. But while the faithful held on to the past, other brands saw the opening and moved in fast. Competition closes in. Every time Harley stumbled, someone else was ready to take the lane. By mid-2025, rival manufacturers were filling the gaps Harley left wide open. Touring bikes from Japan and Europe offered smoother rides, longer warranties, and price tags that didn't make wallets flinch. Riders who once swore allegiance to the bar and shield began looking elsewhere, not out of disloyalty, but out of practicality. A new reality was setting in. Comfort had become the new rebellion. For the same money as a new Harley, a buyer could get heated seats, adjustable windscreens, and infotainment systems that actually worked. Reliability mattered more than nostalgia when a rider was 200 miles from home. Even American-made competitors, smaller and hungrier, were quietly taking market share with bikes that promised more miles per dollar. Dealers saw it first. Customers drifting to used bikes and independence, choosing savings over symbols. Loyalty wasn't dying, it was adapting. For decades, Harley meant tribe and identity, but now riders valued comfort, price, and honesty over pride. You can't guilt people into loyalty, one mechanic said, and he was right. At rallies, rivals parked side by side. Harleys admired, respected, but no longer the automatic choice. And as competition closed in from every direction, a quieter loss began to unfold, not just in profits, but in the very places that kept the culture alive. If you want more honest coverage about what's really happening inside the motorcycle world, subscribe before the next one drops. No marketing, no spin, just straight talk for riders who still care about the machines, the miles, and the truth. When the lights go out, dealership closures are never just business, they're personal. By the end of 2025, several Harley stores in smaller towns had gone dark. The signs came down, the glass doors locked, and the once busy showrooms turned to dust and echoes. For the communities around them, it felt like losing a landmark. These weren't just stores. They were gathering points, service hubs, and social circles wrapped in the smell of oil and coffee. In places like Montana, Arkansas, and Kansas, longtime employees walked out with tears in their eyes. Some had spent 20 years turning wrenches under the Harley logo. Others had built friendships with customers who became like family. When those shops shut down, entire networks of riders lost their home base. The parking lots that once hosted weekend barbecues and charity rides now sat empty. Each closed dealership rippled through small towns hurting suppliers, diners, and motels. Economists called it correction. Riders called it heartbreak. Yet, from the silence rose defiance. Mechanics opened home garages, co-ops formed, and weekend wrenchers shared tools and stories. Out of corporate retreat came rebirth. Beneath flickering lights and scarred workbenches, the real Harley spirit endured. No logos needed, just riders keeping each other, and the engines alive. And yet, beyond the garages and the layoffs, a bigger American story was unfolding. Trade winds and tight belts. By 2025, the storm that hit Harley-Davidson was no longer just a corporate problem. It was a mirror reflecting the state of American manufacturing. Global tariffs, rising shipping costs, and exhausted supply chains tightened around every factory in the country. The post-pandemic recovery that once looked promising had turned into a maze of material shortages and unpredictable demand. What happened to Harley was happening to steel mills, tractor plants, and tool makers across the map. For decades, the company stood as proof that American craftsmanship could still thrive in a world dominated by imports. But when the cost of raw materials doubled and international suppliers began prioritizing faster-moving industries, Harley's old playbook fell apart. Aluminum parts, delayed by weeks, became months. Chrome suppliers raised prices. Even tire shipments started coming with surcharges tied to fuel hikes. Executives called it turbulence. Workers knew it was survival. The hum of factories faded into the clatter of cutbacks, yet Harley remained more than a brand. It was America's mirror. When manufacturing stumbled, Harley felt it first. In 2025, the fever burned high, revealing a nation stretched thin by dependence and doubt, still asking if it had the grit to rebuild what once made it proud. But while production lines slowed and factories fought to breathe, the story took another turn, this time in the used bike market, where the past started outperforming the present. Resale reality. There's an old saying among riders, chrome fades, but value lasts. In 2025, that saying came true in a way few expected. As new models grew pricier and more complicated, the used bike market quietly roared back to life. Early 2000s, touring Harleys, the Twin Cam Road Kings, Electra Glides, and Ultra Classics were suddenly in high demand. The bikes that once sat ignored in the back corners of dealerships were now the most asked about machines. Buyers had figured it out. Those older bikes were simple, durable, and built before corporate accountants started dictating engineering. They didn't have the digital dashboards or glitchy software. They had engines you could understand, frames you could trust, and a sound that didn't need amplification. Riders started paying premium prices for clean examples, and for the first time in years, depreciation reversed. A well-kept 2005 model could sell for nearly what it cost a decade ago. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was logic. Older bikes were easier to fix, cheaper to keep, and built to last. Mechanics loved working on them, forums thrived with rebuild stories, and riders quietly rebelled against overpriced modern machines. Dealers caught on, promoting certified classics to stay alive. For those who always swore the old Harleys were stronger, 2025 finally proved them right beyond all doubt. But even as resale values climbed and garages filled with old steel, something deeper endured, the spirit that built those bikes in the first place. Built in steel, forged in spirit. No matter what happens to Harley-Davidson's balance sheets, one thing never changes: the pride of the people who built and rode the machines. From the foundries of Milwaukee to the small garages in Tennessee, that pride runs deeper than corporate branding. It's the pride of craftsmanship, the belief that real work should outlast the people who do it. In 2025, as the company stumbled, that spirit quietly proved stronger than any quarterly report. Old mechanics still talked about the first time they tuned a carburetor until it purred. Retired welders still ran their hands over tanks they helped shape decades ago. For them, Harley was never just a paycheck or a pastime. It was a promise that American hands could still build something the world admired. That idea, forged in grease and grit, refuses to die no matter what the headlines say. Every leak, rattle, and stubborn bolt became part of Harley's story. A reminder that imperfection is human and spirit is earned. Veterans still rode on worn tires and aching backs, chasing freedom that couldn't be bought. The chrome may dull, but the pride endures. History won't just see struggle. It will see resilience. Built in steel, forged in spirit, Harley's true strength always lived beyond the boardroom. And out on that long road, the final word didn't belong to the executives or the investors. It belonged to the riders themselves. The riders' verdict. By the close of 2025, the verdict was clear. Riders had taken back control of the conversation. They stopped waiting for corporate fixes and started defining what the brand meant on their own terms. The power balance flipped for the first time in decades. The company no longer dictated the culture. The culture dictated the company. The forums, rallies, and meetups became a new kind of leadership circle. Riders shared information about dealer, markups, maintenance hacks, and reliable, independent shops. Videos exposing unfair practices went viral faster than official statements could respond. The audience had become the watchdog, and Harley's decisions now faced real-time judgment from the people who mattered most, the riders themselves. For some, it felt like rebellion. For others, renewal. It reminded riders why they ever loved Harley, not for luxury, but for freedom reclaimed. Its worth isn't on a price tag, but in the miles, the scars, and the stories of those who ride. The company may stumble or rebuild, but the meaning endures. Because in the end, loyalty isn't about logic, it's about legacy, written in steel and spirit. At the end of the day, Harley's story in 2025 isn't just about numbers. It's about what happens when a company forgets the people who built its name. The badge might have stumbled, but the riders never did. We're the ones keeping that spirit alive, 1 mile at a time. If you've ever wrenched on your own bike or watched the sun rise over a cold highway, you get it. So drop your thoughts below. Did Harley lose the plot? Or are they finally waking up? Hit like, subscribe, and let's keep this road honest, one story at a time.